local? Has anybody come far? No. I have. So they put me on the slow train from Euston. So after 27 stops, I just thought, oh my God, this is right. But anyway, I'm now, oh, that's my book. I mean, so when I came, the libraries run out of them. People have hired it already. I told you there's no edit point. Once I'm on the galloping horse now, I just yabber. And do you like my bag?
Yeah. Amazing.
I brought my glitter bag. So I've overdressed. I've dressed as my book and as the sunset on Tresco, the answer said, I'm now handing over to the person.
Hello everyone, welcome to Bushey Library, and I'd like to welcome Tina Baker. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We've all been looking forward to meeting you. And congratulations, because what we did in the storm, your 4th book came out in February. So that's amazing, have 4 books.
It still doesn't feel real. There's still a very small part of myself that thinks that somebody's popped into Bushey with props. And you get them and those fake books in fake libraries, but they're not the real. They've got my words in them.
They are real. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of background on you for everybody.
I know this thing.
So, Tina has worked as a journalist and broadcaster for 30 years. She's probably best known as a television critic for the BBC and GMTV and for winning Celebrity Fit Club.
It's all gone horribly wrong.
Since winning Celebrity Fit Club, she has worked as a personal trainer and fitness instructor. And now you've got 4 novels under your belt with Viper books. So What We Did in the Storm has been your most recent release. And I thought it was also quite interesting to mention that you were the daughter of a window cleaner and fairground traveller, and you were the great-granddaughter of a trapeze artist.
Yeah, she's on my, actually, where is she? I've forgotten where she is. She's up there, that's my great-grandma. I can't get that up with my muscles, but she's on a trapeze up there.
Amazing.
And they're my aunties. My auntie's got a kiddie ride, like the horses. Swans are more Victorian, she didn't have a swan. And then because I've got 4 cats, well, 3 cats and a kitten, I've got kittens as well.
So what was it like growing up on the fairground?
Well, it wasn't exactly on a fairground because the fairground people wouldn't speak to my mum because she got pregnant with me with a window cleaner. And my dad's lot wouldn't speak to either of them because he got off with somebody from the fairground. So it was, I had sort of a magical childhood in one way, like we went around with a fair and I gave out the ping pong balls when you could win a goldfish. I can make candy floss. That's exactly how you make candy floss. I can do toffee apples, and my grandma and granddad used to have a coconut shop. And I've met one other author, William Hussey, who's from that same background, because you don't get that many working class people who become authors. Literally, there's 2 of us, I think, who've come from a fairground background. And everybody's dead interested in the fairground stuff that we did. And it's like, I used to have my own window cleaning round. Nobody's interested in that. But I did, that was, I always worked, like for our pocket money, we always worked. So yes, I can clean windows. Not that I do. But yeah, I could do both. A bit of that, a bit of that.
And so Call Me Mummy, your debut novel, came out in 2021. What made you decide to write that novel at that point in your life?
Yeah, so that's my first one. I'm really proud of this because it's the first one I sold. It was the second book I've written, not the first, funnily enough. And I'd waited like 60 years to become a published novelist, and I'd gone back to university and done an MA. When my dad died, I thought, if not now, when? Bit the bullet, did an MA in novel writing at City University in London. You don't have to do that if anybody's wanting to write a novel. You genuinely don't have to do that. But I felt I'm one of these people, I never feel good enough, and I felt if I've got a certificate, and also if I spent the money, it will make me write the novel. on that course, they said, go somewhere you've never been before. And a lot of the people, like, they went to drag clubs and stuff like that. I've done that. So I went to mother care because I found that really difficult because we tried to have a baby and we didn't. And I'd never been. And I'm going to choke up on this. I'm going to mother care. I'm sure lots of you have had kids or no kids. There's something about, frocks that big and booties that big. And so I'm like, horizontal tears. I cried so much I pulled a muscle in my throat and gave myself an asthma attack. So I just staggered out of mother care and I thought, what if I'd given in, particularly when we're doing like the IVF type treatment, you're full of hormones. I'm quite highly strung anyway, that you break and you just steal a kid. Particularly if you steal a child who you think's being abused. And that idea came to me in the mother care. I was furious. By the time that book came out, mother care had gone bankrupt. So I had to sort of change mother care to Peacocks, where I got my bag. And I got my bag sort of 6 years ago now, but I got that bag because I had to go into the Peacocks to make sure they'd got the children's section. And it did, so I think it would have been better and darker if she'd been stealing a child from mother care. So it was a sort of cathartic experience because it was quite painful to write. But also, the other bit of me knew I'd had a terrible relationship with my mum. What if I was the world's worst mother or the world's worst child? So the voices in Call Me Mummy are from the woman who I do not give a name to. Her whole identity is Call Me Mummy. That's, when you're obsessed, you would have to be unhinged to steal a child because empathy would stop you doing that, wouldn't it? Yeah. You couldn't do that to another person. And then the mum in Call Me Mummy is a working class woman who smokes while pregnant. So you can imagine if Madeleine McCann's parents, who were crucified by the press, you can imagine what they would have done to a person who swore, who, they'd get a photo of her smoking with her, she's pregnant with another child, and she is vilified by the press. She's called Scummy Mummy. So it's her voice, and I also felt what I'd not heard that much of, I gave a voice to a very naughty child who is stolen, because I was a bucker, excuse my language. As a kid, I was a tomboy, I was a fighter, me and my brother just fought every day, and I was a bit wild, and I was not the mother, not the daughter my mother wanted. She, oh God, here we go again. She wanted like a little doll-like child, and I can remember she dressed me up as a geisha girl for one like fancy dress, and it literally lasted about 5 minutes. And I'd broken everything, and the bun she put up was all over, and I was like running around. And the look on her face of like complete disappointment. So they're the three women who I have known and have felt in myself. So there's a lot of me in all my books. But again, if we've got any would-be novel writers, you can actually just write a story. You don't have to put yourself through the ringer like I do. I don't know why. It's like method acting or acting. It's like I just chuck myself in. And I was so relieved when it came out and all the bookshops were shut. I thought it's over before it began.
So after your launch party for What We Did in the Storm, we saw that you put on Twitter, I've waited 66 years and 4 books for this. What did you mean by that comment?
So, as I said, that came out in lockdown. She's got 2 questions, it's more than normal, it's just like, then Last Little got to come out and made me clean. I'm not looking because I do know the names of them, but I like to look at them. But I'd never had a book launch because debuts usually get a book launch. I'm with a really small publisher, and I was only the 2nd book they ever published, and it got to number 1 on their, they were so thrilled, and they also published Janice Hallett, who's now a personal friend of mine. And we were there on the very first launch party of Viper, but because my first book had come out in lockdown, I didn't have a launch. The second one came out and I'd just come out of shielding. I've got really dodgy lungs. Despite being quite fit, if you've got an underlying condition, I've got asthma. You know, I was very slow to sort of go back into the world. In fact, I shielded so well, honest truth, I had to have hypnotherapy to get out of the house because I almost got like agoraphobic. And I could make myself go to work, but I couldn't make myself do anything else. And I know that sounds mad, but, you know, I am. And then by the time it made me clean, I actually asked my publisher because I'd started last year to go to launches. And all a launch is people stand in a bookshop with a glass of wine. You've been to millions. But that's what it is. No, she doesn't just go for the wine. But you know what it's like. It is literally just standing around in a bookshop. But there's part of me, that working class imposter syndrome, that it's like, I'm not good enough to stand in a bookshop, drink a glass of wine. I don't drink anymore, so it wasn't for the wine. But it felt like I'd not celebrated it. So I just said to my publisher, do you think we can have a book launch? And he says, oh yeah, we just didn't think you wanted one. It's like, we never asked. But yes, so that's what I meant. It's like, it's taken all that time to see my book in a window of a bookshop. They did a big display. I was crying my makeup off before I got into that bookshop. It was Goldsborough Books, you've been to that one. Goldsborough Books is a posh bookshop in Covent Garden in back there, London. And it's like part of me, you know, I really dressed up. I had more sequins than, well, Julie and Clary, quite frankly. And, you know, more makeup on than RuPaul's Drag Race. But that's how I cope with my shyness, because nobody ever really realises I'm shy, because I never shut up. And people, it's a nice cover, because if I chat enough, people don't say the horrible thing, you know. So yes, it was a long time coming in. It did feel worth it. It felt like acknowledging. I'd wanted this since I was a little kid. Sidebar question, because why did I always want to be a writer? Because my mum couldn't read or write. Fairgrounds, you don't get a chance to go to school. She managed. My granddad signed his name with an X. It was horrible when she did go to school because she was left-handed and her hand was tied behind the back and she was beaten by nuns, helpfully. So my dad was very clever, but he had to leave school because his mum was a widow and he had to go on her money. He got his 11 plus but couldn't stay on. And they both valued learning. So I always did, and I always thought I'd love to write a book. You know, like when you're really little and you also want to go to the moon and be a vet. And it felt like that sort of, like it's unachievable. I'm going to write a book, I'm going to be a novelist. And I just thought novelists either died of consumption in a garret, which was probably my, you know, thing, or they were very, very rich. And I can remember interviewing Barbara Cartland, who was probably a better interviewer than me. You know, and she literally, sort of dressed in pink on a chaise longue, dictating a novel. So I think there was quite a bit of editing in that. But that's my mind. It was like you're either really posh and you dash off a novel, or you're, you know, work is slaving over a hot typewriter. I'm that old, typewriters. And I've got a computer. So, yeah, I've always wanted to do it, and it just felt important to sort of acknowledge it.
Yeah, definitely.
2 questions she's got in, 20 minutes in.
So I've noticed as well that you quite often dress up to kind of match your books. And I was just wondering where that kind of tradition started, because for the launch of What We Did in the Storm, you have this beautiful sequin dress, as you see. There's a video on your Instagram as well, kind of compilation of all the different outfits you bought.
So as my actual mother, the mother that I wish I'd had, RuPaul, says, we're all born naked and the rest is drag. So whether or not you put on a uniform for work, it's like, I can't remember what I was wearing when I saw you, but it was loud, wasn't it? Yeah.
Did you dress as a bumblebee?
I did. My very first literary festival, I got 2 minutes to read from Call Me Mummy. It was Bloody Scotland. That's not swearing. You'll know when I swear. But Bloody Scotland is this great big festival in Stirling, and it's a sign. And the session was called Killer Bees, and it was Mark Bellingham and Chris Brookmeyer, and they're very, you know, sort of bestsellers, and me having 2 minutes, and I don't know why it popped into my head, but I honour whatever pops into my head. So whatever pops into my head is out of my mouth. I've got no filter. But this image of a bumblebee, it's a killer bee. I'll dress as a bee. So I bought an inflatable bee costume, as you do, and ran onto the stage and did my reading and ran off, and that was great. And I did my book signing. So they got 20,000 people. I had 5, but my 5 were great. And as I was telling them all my life story, and they were desperate to get away, it's like I only want my book signed. I then realised I was trapped in the bee costume because the zipper broke, and a very nice person from Waterstone Stirling had to get me out of the costume. So yeah, it's partly to get over the, because it gives you something to talk about as well. It's like, look, I'm dressed as a seascape, and it cheers me up, and I feel like I live up to what I wear. I mean, we all like to dress up. Makeup, as even before I was on telly, I always used to wear tons of makeup. I'm a child of the 70s, it's David Bowie. But it gives me a confidence. I wish in an alternative light I was sort of confident to just not wear makeup, because also I was thrown out of a feminist meeting for wearing makeup. And it's like, but surely it's about self-expression, and I just like wearing makeup. And it cheers me up. I don't think I look 20, I know what I look like, but it cheers me up. So the dressing up thing, I was gutted that somebody in the publisher said, well, it could be detrimental. I don't know who said that, but it's like, why could it be detrimental, It doesn't change my words. I know I turn up and it's like, oh yeah, I like My Little Pony, and then you open the book, it's like, oh my Christ, she's dark. But there's jokes in my books, because that's my experience of life. That you can dress the rainbow, but also talk about things that for me are really hard to talk about. So that's my range, really. I couldn't cope with some of the stuff that's happened to me without joking about it or brightening it up.
Yeah. I think it's important though as well that you can feel like you can be yourself in your books and then be this other person as well.
Yeah, I mean, you don't expect somebody to, wear sackcloth and ashes if they're writing horror, do you? Do you really? And some of the children's writers, have gone through depressions and stuff. If they're interviewed, you don't always have to be one note.
Yeah, it can be different people. Yes. So the setting of Tresco in What We Did in the Storm is a special place to you.
Yes.
It's where you met your husband. And
he couldn't be here because the kitten's just in Spain. Seriously, he was going to come, but the kitten's just messed up.
And then you also had your wedding blessing there.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to set a thriller in such a special place for you?
Oh, I like to ruin things. These 3 have been called North London Noir. I write domestic noir. So I don't write the sort of thriller like Jack Reacher where you're jumping out of a helicopter and there's, an evil cult. Because as far as I know, I've been in a helicopter actually, but I've never jumped out of it. But I've not been part of an evil cult, and I'm not an international espionage expert. So Tresco, you can go on a helicopter, you can go on a plane, you can go on a ferry. I've done all of them, and I've been sick on all of them because I'm very travel sick. Getting here tonight, I couldn't even have my chips. The library provided chips, and I couldn't eat them. That's how sick I was. But it's this beautiful island. Has anybody been to the Scillies? They're just exquisite, aren't they? It felt again a bit like me going into a posh bookshop, that I'd be the one they just said you're too common for this island. But my friends have got a timeshare on the island. These really good friends of mine, the only gays on the island we used to guess, because they always used to try and work out which one I was with. It's like, they're just together, get over it. Anyway, they had this timeshare there, and they invited me over there, and I met my husband. Of all the bars in all the world, I walked into the one pub on the island. So I met Jeff, we courted long distance, and eventually, like some sort of reverse siren, I lured him off the rock to London. And we got married in Barbados, because I had been married before. And I thought, I can't do the church wedding thing, but we'll have a blessing on Tresco, because it's, I was part of the community for 2 or 3 years when I was with him. It's so beautiful. The island thrillers I've read have been like those closed room things. You know what I mean? It's not that, just in case you were thinking of that. They can get off the island. But it's a small community, and I'm from a very small town called Colville, a pit town up in Leicester. And there's something about small communities which can be great and not so great. And I just thought, so you've got rumours and superstitions, and you've got gossip. And also, it's a very, I don't know if you felt this, but when I got there, I copped up with the barman. And then there are, Prince Charles goes. It's like his friends run the island, so it's that posh. And a lot of the people who had timeshares were like, lords and ladies. And there's bits I don't like about that, like they kill the pheasants, or grouse. God forgive me, I think it's grouse anyway. But there's a gamekeeper who rears things so they can blast them apart on New Year. It's like, no. And the workers, because I was more on the, sort of going out to the bar, and I knew the workers. The cleaners, there are scenes in that book that are actually true of what happened at some of those parties, which and it's the way people can. I've got lovely posh friends. I went out with the Lord once. It was like a different species. I did feel there was that disconnect when I was talking about some things that you just didn't understand. Like, I'm constantly worried about money, for instance. I'm constantly think you've got to work for a living. And the workers in my book and on the actual island work really hard. And I've been there in gig season. So we had the World Championship gig rowing, which is really heavy boats. And my husband, Jeff, rowed in that. He rowed in the B team. He wasn't quite good enough for the A team. And the islands are suddenly, there's thousands and thousands of people on this tiny little bit of rock who come to watch the gig racing. So it's over a season and a season and a season, a whole year. And bad things happen to good people. What can I tell you? I'm not going to give anything away. I have to borrow the book.
Yes.